this is the time to introduce the next big question. three directors and the writers particularly, and it's the issue of reviews and where you stand on that, because I for a producer, in a way, they're currency. They are an opportunity to make someone credible or objective. And you can play them, but they don't go to my very soul. What I mean? Because at the end of the day, like I can never be. I'm never the director. The director is the name. And so it's like they're being screwed during the making because they want all these things, and then they're being judged on what they've been made, and it's like, they lose out either way, or they gain either way. You know what I mean? So anyway.
I like Huey Ball's style, where he challenged them to a boxing match and beat the shit out of them.
Directors should challenge critics.
The worst is, though, I find like that. The worst is when you agree with the review. Like, when they say something and you kind of go,
yeah, you're that right, yeah.
I thought that actually, you're right. Like, it wasn't as good or whatever. Or that could have been better. Where they sort of, sometimes you can get convinced along the way but there might be a doubt about something in the back of your head, you know what I mean? You kind of go, well, maybe I got away with that, like, you know what I mean? Whatever, And
they point it out to you,
and then you just point it out. And so it's not...
I don't mind that.
Yeah, like, oh no, I mean, that's just something, that's the thing you have to live with yourself, and that's the thing you have to go, right, okay, I gotta do that better, but I mean, I've read reviews where they say, Conor McMahon, I want that hour and a half of my life back, and stuff. And like, it's almost like it takes about 3 years to be able to laugh at the reviews. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can laugh at that from the first film I made. Like, it doesn't bother me. Like, it's kind of like, okay, but like, there's definitely a period where I just get the people to produce whatever, because they sort of look at everything to send to me reviews, because I know they only send
the
me
nice ones.
the nice ones.
Yeah. Now, my philosophy is that if I'm going to believe the really great reviews, I need to
believe the bad ones.
And I think that for me, I kind of went through this strange evolution with Citadel, whereby you start off reading every review. You're googling for any mention of the film, and thankfully the first reviews from South by Southwest were great, but it gets to a stage where that you go through what I call like a shock wall, where you take the negative stuff very personally. You're like, what the fuck is this? And you almost need to go through that, I think, to come out the other side a lot more wise to sort of, like, it gets to a certain point where you're not reading reviews.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because they are stifling, and you
or
get
just
accept
accept that. Look, that's just someone's opinion.
Yeah, or you start to realize that there's patterns. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, with Citadel, it was like there were almost like 3 types of great reviews and 3 types of bad reviews, and never anything in between for some reason. But like for me, it got to a stage where it's like, okay, I get it. I know what I didn't do good with it, and I know what I did right. I need to stop reading reviews, or I'll never make another film. You get obsessed with things. Like, I've never read one, including with any of my shorts, any review that's gone on IMDb. I'm just not interested.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I think that you can get obsessed with navel gazing your own self, and that just becomes like a straitjacket.
The worst is when you read like 3 or 4 good reviews, and then you read one little comment that's negative, and then that haunts you for like a couple of days.
I haven't written a film. Well, I haven't had a film made. Hopefully in the future, sometime I will. But when we were doing Zombie Bashers, I remember
8 years, Steve.
In 8 years, when I go back on the dough, I've no stamps left. I remember, like, we didn't, like, because it was such a low key thing that we did. Like, it was kind of more. I remember boards is the worst. I don't know why anyone would go on boards or.
Oh God! Years ago, I saw a director, and he went on and tried to reason with the people on there. There's no reasoning with it.
You don't.
It's like
reasoning.
trying to make sense of YouTube comments.
It's like, an amazing example for me is the fact that until relatively recently, Damon Lindelof was on Twitter. And people would send him abuse, and he'd retweet it.
It's about Prometheus, is it?
Everything he's lost, Prometheus, right? He would retweet it, and like really vicious kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or he'd reply to them, And I don't know whether it's because, you know, when
we did it with Newsbag. Newsbag got, when the cartoon went on my episode where people were hating it, so I just started retweeting all the hate stuff, and I was kind of going, why am I doing this?
But like it's like, you know, if there's somebody shouting from a corner wanting attention, the worst thing you can do is to give them attention.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, if you acknowledge that they're there,
that's
it's going to pump them up even more, and then suddenly there's a crowd behind them, and then, you know, you've got to ignore that stuff. Like, literally, you just got to ignore it.
Well, maybe the thing is, it's interesting. I didn't actually mean it with the question. I kind of, it's a nice corollary, but it's social media. It is like virulent. You know, everybody is a critic.
Yeah.
And I always remember with Savage, the very first ever critical thing that we saw on the internet back in 2000, and you don't know, looking on the internet was a big deal for me, 2008 technically wise. And the very first thing that we see was a horrendous...
No, it wasn't a horrendous review. You see, it felt it felt horrendous, but it wasn't actually that bad. I've seen far worse since.
But still, but I suppose the point is that because it was such a shock, I suppose, you know, when you see something...
No, I know why it pissed us off, because we were trying to get a sales agent at the time, and we were in discussions and stuff, and we just thought... And it was on IMDb, and suddenly the review then was taken up by Quiet Earth, and suddenly it went to IMDb, and it was like it was everywhere, but it wasn't even a bad review.
Yeah, but I suppose what it was, the interesting thing is...
It was indifferent.
It's not so much... The context of the review,
sure,
whether they like it or dislike it, is that this guy was not a journalist, okay? And I think this is a really interesting thing, is that in a way that's...
He was a blogger,
because everybody, you know, you don't need to go to college to get your critical degree or whatever, or do you? And it's this... Do you need the person to be objective, and you know that by looking at what they've done?
Well, they need to have proper grammar.
Credentials. And it's an interesting thing about
not type in capital letters.
That, you know, this sense of credentials when people comment on what
absolutely. I think it's a huge thing, and it's the thing that we're one of the first generations to face that other filmmakers in the past didn't. You know, that you'd release a film and there'd be the set number of critics in newspapers or whatever, and that was it. But now everyone's a critic, and it's kind of you know, it's a reflection of what's happening to, you know, everyone, you know, who uses Facebook or Twitter. Is that everyone wants the sense that they're being acknowledged.
Exactly.
You know, and I think that can be a dangerous thing if you pay too much attention to it, because there's a lot of stupid people out there.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
And you can't give everything equal weight. And another kind of, you know, sort of expression and want of acknowledgement is to be a contrarian. You know, so it's like if you have, you know, comment after comment, you know, it was great, it's the most amazing cinematic experience of my life. The guy who's going to get noticed, the post taking up, like, oh, this is a pile of shit. You know, you're all trolls for saying it's great.
But I remember, I remember like when the internet first started, I remember like me and my friend, I can't remember how old I was, maybe 15, 16, something like that. And like we were online and we'd go on like, and there'd be about 10 of us in the room, like all crowded around the computer. And we'd be all like going, hee, I'll say that, like, you know, it could have been in the chat room or something, comment on something. And we're just like winding people up. And like people would get really mad on the other end. And like, I couldn't understand how people could take it seriously, something that was...
They don't know you're 14-year-old kids. You know,
I know, but I just think it's funny. Now I know how it might be. Because like someone who's like, that's shy, it could be just some kid going hee at home. But then when you read it, it's this like...
No, but it's a 40-year-old man. No, but it
is. The thing about typing something is no one sees the face, because people gauge things by people's faces or how the tone of how they say it. So if you're like, just like that thing of, it's a piece of shit, you read it as, it's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And you go, you take highly, I'm going to go around and break it.
But what you've got is, you've got situations where people, and God knows it's hard than ever to get films off the ground. And you've got a situation where a director's poured their life and soul into a project and a writer or whatever cast, and everybody for 6-7 years, it comes out, you know, everyone knows in their heart where it really stands and you kind of stuff. But someone can manipulate things quite massively.
Just that whole thing now, taking things out of context as well. You give an interview to a journalist and
and it has happened.
It's
Or people, you know, being pulled up for reviewing their own stuff, or get their companies kind of. It's a really interesting dynamic. I remember I was speaking to another producer in another country, and they were saying, well, I won't work with this particular person because they're, you know, they have a reputation for manipulating things quite massively in terms of their reviews, and they have a whole team of things.
That's
you know?
it,
Yeah, I think you need to have a bit of confidence to nearly stand behind, even with some bad reviews, as long as there's a balance. You know, it's not all bad, or it's you know, there's a percentage in your favour.
Totally, yeah.
You just,
but I think, like Conor said, I think you know deep down yourself.
whether you failed or not.
You know yourself, and sometimes reviews.
And then why manipulate it when you believe you failed?
Yeah.
Do you know?
You know what I mean? Like, you know yourself what works and what doesn't work. I think, and reviews either reflect that or they don't. And it's the ones that will make you angry are the ones that just, you know, don't get it at all.
Yeah.
They've completely missed, you know. But I really think that in the age of social media, like with Lindelof and Robert Orkey as well left Twitter, and George Lucas apparently retired because of the abuse he was getting. You know, from, you know, this guy basically invented so much stuff we use today, from nonlinear editing to THX, but he's the guy who invented Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, you're such a bad person.
He just
I agree with you.
abuse, you know, and it's like, you know, and rather than
cyberbullying.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is cyberbullying.
And rather than being able to, like, I would hate to be in secondary school now.
Yeah, I would as well.
With the fact that you tag people and all this kind of shit that's going on. But I think that we need to learn to be able to ignore and not.
Yeah, because it's there. Yeah. It's not, and it's freedom of speech, isn't it? Like, you know.
Sure, I mean,
that's what everyone claims. Yeah.
But I agree. I think, like.
No, it's great, but Ciarán's right. You have to actually learn to let it just become white noise.
Well, here's another thing in this day and age, right? With four creators around the table as well. That who says it has to be 90 minutes nowadays? Who says that film is 90 minutes?
Well, no, there's 2 hours, 3 hours.
Well, or 90 minutes or 2 hours. I mean, what I suppose is, you know, everyone's talked about tweets and social media and the attention span of an audience, and I suppose I'm saying in the next 10 years, is the idea of a feature film always going to be a feature film? You know, it has been the same kind of length and concept for, you know.
Yeah, why was that? There is a reason why they had the 90
bathroom breaks.
Was it? But why from an hour to 90, and, you know?
I don't know. I mean, I know Hitchcock said that he'd never make a film longer than you could actually hold in a toilet's worth in your bladder.
So but a 3-hour film then is pushing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't make it through a 3-hour film without taking a whiz.
When I went to see The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship, when it came out, it was the first time I've ever been in a cinema where the film cut out halfway through so people could go to the toilet, and I'd never experienced that before.
I was talking to a guy recently, I don't know, but it kind of twigged with me because he was saying 90 minutes, but it's something else. He was a guy, does a lot of meditation stuff like this, and he'd write, but he said he could only do this type of meditation for 90 minutes because it's the amount of time that his brain can focus on one thing before it starts to. So he was just talking about this meditation cycle he was doing, but it occurred to me, I wonder, is there an attention thing that you can actually sit down and focus on something for 90 minutes before your brain goes, right, I have enough of that?
I don't know, because, you know, for me, I've watched films that are 90 minutes that feel like 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I've watched films that
I agree.
like The Fellowship of the Ring that felt like it was.
I watched The Godfather. I watched The Godfather recently, and I didn't touch my phone or anything like that. It just held my attention. Then I've gone to the cinema and just gone, why hasn't this ended yet? You know, I think I do agree with you. I think that's a poignant question of, are the attention spans of human beings getting shorter and shorter? I think
yes and no, but I think with, in terms of movies, you know, there's a set amount of time you need to, I feel anyway, to get to know a character. You know, there's a set amount of, you know, if you make it an hour, if it's like an episode of TV, you know, if you want people to feel a sense of pathos or a sense of catharsis at the end, it's very hard.
Well, it happens over many episodes, and
but if that was it, was 60 minutes, it's very hard to. I think to do and twice as hard if something's half an hour.
And then another point is we've all got phones sitting around here, and would you ever make anything to go onto that? You know, does it have to be in a cinema?
I'm sure
You know,
someone's
I know
watched.
David
I'm
Lynch
sure someone's
gets
watched
out there
Citadel on
people
that.
who-
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you
I just
watch or make?
I watch stuff on my phone, and I have
I
watched
don't,
films
so
on
I'd
it.
be
Yeah.
completely
I
against
was
it.
I was on a bus about 3 weeks ago, and there was a teenage girl beside me, and she was watching Netflix on her phone, and she was watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
But see, that I think that's
And a
for
little part of me died. You know, it was like, you know, that you haven't watched it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you know?
no, but that happened like exactly. I was on a bus to, I think it was to Athlone before, and someone was watching Lawrence of Arabia on their phone, and I went, well, what's the point? I wouldn't even watch it. Like, I don't think TV does it justice. I think you need to see it on the big screen. And
I suppose there probably there's other films though that they aren't the scale. They don't need the scale. They're more intimate.
well, the big thing that I would say was a Phil in England, that kind of thing where they released them on TV, VOD, DVD, and the cinema on the same day. And I don't know how well it did, but it was, to me, it was just an interesting experiment where it was on the TV. And I remember watching a bit of it on TV. Actually, I actually prefer to watch this in the cinema. I think the landscape of distribution is changing more than anything. I think people are just.
I really don't get why someone would watch a movie on their phone. It's like, you know, are they that bored that, like, you know, I'll watch on a plane. I'll watch a movie on my iPad, and that's
Or
just
on the,
on the screen in front
on
of
the
you.
screen,
Yeah.
which is pretty much the same size as an iPad. You know, and that's because I'm on something I'm on for 4 hours and I've you know nothing to do. But I think if you know, if you're going to work for half an hour, I mean, and you know, to watch something on your phone, I don't know, read a book, you know, listen to some music. It's
Read
just,
an
you know,
article.
you know, I think the idea of having to watch something on your phone when, you know, at home we have TVs and we have computers and we have, you know.
And the funny thing is the way you say it, the technology, the way it's going about, things are getting smaller. Like, I know Google Glasses is coming out, and you can actually watch films by wearing a pair of glasses.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, like that's at the point where you're kind of
As you're walking around.
as you're walking around. So I don't know why you want to walk around and watch The Godfather while people are passing you by. I don't go to the cinema to interact with people. You know what I mean? I'd rather just sit and watch the film. My biggest pet hate is when people take their phones out in the cinema. For starters, but like, I agree. Like, why sometimes just watching a film on your phone it's not the same.
It's funny because we were talking about, you know, a while back about how, you know, the sort of younger generations were couldn't watch a movie without having their phone in their hands. You know, at home, you know, they watch the movie still flicking on the phone.
It's
you know,
really interesting.
tweeting about it.
Or you know, and
Watching The Godfather hashtag.
you know, and it kind of, you know, it kind of, on the one hand, it frightens me because, you know, to me that's the equivalent of somebody reading a book and flicking through the pages while they're watching something in front of them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's
like, I don't get that, but it's funny, you know. The last few times I've been in a multiplex, and you know, you suddenly, you know, you see that you're surrounded by, you know, there's a gang of sort of 15, 16-year-olds over there, and they're all on their phone, and you're like, oh Jesus. But it's funny how still I can gauge that, you know, within the first sort of 10 minutes, if they've shut up and are engaged in the film, you know, the film is working. And funny, you know, even though, you know, I'll give a film the benefit of the doubt and I'll watch it, I'll just watch it. I'll find sometimes when they're annoying me the most, I'm not engaged with the film either.
Yeah.
You know, and I won't admit that, but it's
But I did find, just because I was working on this TV show and I hadn't done it yet and I knew other people were doing it, and I said, I'll give this a try. But it's, do you know where people now, it's like you're watching a show and you've got Twitter open and you're watching the Twitter feed as you're watching the show. And it was actually really interesting to do, partly because I worked on the show, so it was interesting to see like this feed of comments.
The hashtag culture.
Yeah, but I just mean, by the end of that episode, I can almost tell what the ratings are going to be like, because you get this sort of spread of comments, but you kind of know, again, it's sort of like, okay, out of 100, if 90% of them are positive, you know it's done pretty well. But it's still funny, it's almost like another level of watching the thing, do you know what I mean?
But that's like an extreme level of, we were talking earlier about the critics, that's like the worst extreme level of watching critics one after like this sort of space.
Yeah, they're commenting on this. Should be
It's
like,
horrifying.
line
That's
by
like,
line on the
to be honest with you, that's my worst nightmare.
That's horrendous.
Yeah.
But that's what everyone does now.
That's what's moved. That's why people watch sport. That's the way.
That's the noise.
They've invented a new box. I don't know what's it called. They've invented a new thing now, so that's not just a phone and a TV. It's inbuilt into TV that you can.
You can see the tweets going on the side.
Yeah, it's like, well, why
Why would you
not
want to
the?
do that?
It's. I have to say now.
Sure,
I
No,
was.
I'm not asking you. I'm just like in general wondering.
Like what show was this? You know,
Oh, The Fear.
Right, okay.
Cameron show.
right. Well, if something, I mean, that's built around gags and stuff like that. Yeah. And there's a certain amount of setup and expectation.
Yeah.
If that was something that I felt was, that I wanted an atmosphere to start to
Oh
build,
yeah. You wouldn't
and
want
people were
Alien.
tweeting,
Yeah.
exactly, like
Yeah.
Alien, and people were going, a bit bored by this section here or whatever.
Yeah.
I
Miss Michael Bean in films. Hashtag. Yeah.
Okay, here's another, and I'm asking all the questions because you're all around the table.
What makes my job?
Trailers, advertising.
Trailers to me
Have you
now.
ever felt duped or the other way around?
My
They
problem.
give away too much.
Yeah, that's my problem with trailers. Is you basically know this. In some trailers, you know the beginning, the middle, and the end by the time you even hit the cinema.
most of the teasers are better.
Yeah.
Than the trailer.
I couldn't think of one on the top of my head, but I remember seeing trailers and going, sure, there's no point in me seeing the film now because I know
You're
what
like, why
happens.
would you put the end of a film in a trailer? Like sometimes you see that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? They're
Well, it's-
giving you the twist in the middle or something. You know.
But they know, kind of like what you were saying earlier about, when you work out how many fans there are of something in a similar way, they know if they get their opening weekend, if they sucker a lot of people in with this great trailer that, you're looking at it thinking, wow, that's just a snippet.
Yeah.
Imagine what
What
the
the whole
film's
thing's gonna be like, yeah.
And they go to see it and they get their opening weekend and that's that, So I can see why they do it from a marketing perspective.
It's a pity because I saw an interview with John Landis recently, and he was talking about when he was making films, it took you could be in for 3 or 4 weeks, and word of mouth would make your films grow, and now you're fucked.
Well, word of mouth is like that now because of Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, you see, there you go, accelerated.
Well, this is it. I don't know if anyone's seen any old trailers recently because
I do watch some of them on the old VHS.
because I ended up watching a whole film which is of old trailers.
Yeah, with the voice.
Yeah,
I miss that voice.
And
In a world.
Yeah.
honestly, if you take away the cheap, they're actually quite well. They're very conservative and constructed, and a lot of the time they spend most of the time guiding you only to a certain section of the story. They're actually very good.
So they're
about
setting you
not
up,
giving-
setting it up, yeah.
and they really understand the idea of a taste rather than the whole course.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I suppose again I was going to just ask, is that what's needed now? Is everybody going, well, I won't trust the taste. I want to know what I'm getting before I go in. It's kind of it's something that I've only become aware of myself. And it would come down to projects that you have in development at a very early stage, or everyone here is writing stuff or being involved in stuff.
Yeah.
And for a lot of filmmakers now, they're asked, don't come up with the poster exactly, but like, if you were going to sum it up, what is it? And who is it? And it's intriguing.
But yeah, I know even on my film there was like with the trailer, it was all this like, do you sell it as a straight horror or do you do it as a comedy? And I go, well, it is a comedy. Like, alright, it's supposed to be. But I just mean what the film is doesn't even come into the conversation. It's like, okay, this is the footage we have. What is the best thing we can put together that can, and then they do have these companies that go off and come back and go, yeah, we feel that actually what people want is straight horror now, and so now we've cut it to that. But I don't know how that actually happens. Like,
But does it bother you? Like, I mean, in a way, the only thing that ever bothered me was when I saw a sales promo at 2.5 minutes go out in the net as a trailer, and gave away every twist in the film.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a trailer. It was, but yeah, how do they allow it to not get past? It's only for distributors. So,
And everything's going to end up on the net. No matter
But what I'm asking you is, like, I suppose at that stage I nearly sort of go, okay, it's in your hands. The film is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I was a bit upset on Citadel, in the sense that, especially the UK distribution, you know, it was like Connor's saying, you know, they decide what are they going to sell this as, and they feel that, you know, if they sell it as a straightforward schlocky horror, they probably might buy some more, get people buying some more DVDs. My point of view was that, you know, it's a psychological horror, and I felt that the people who buy the DVD who really love schlocky horror are going to be really annoyed when they watch it, and the people who love psychological horror will never get it in the first place, you know, and I think that's reflected in some ways by you know, some people's reaction to the film. You know, it's like that they expected it to be something else. You know,
we had that. We put a knife on the front. Yeah, I mean, even when we were pitching the film, I remember kind of going, look, if it all fails, and even if it's shit, we still got a guy on the front with a knife. And it's called Savage. And it ended up being the cover and the poster. And in a way, it's not really like all about knives and
It's
savagery.
not really, because the thing about Savage, and when I went to see it, is nothing really kind of the savagery really happens till the end. Of the film. It's not like it's like a Halloween or something where there's a guy just going and stabbing people.
Sure, so it's going to disappoint someone who's looking for that.
But I what Ciarán's saying is like it's the thing of selling something that's what it's not. You're disappointing the people who are going, oh my god, that's what it is, and then they see it and they're like, no, it's not. That's a big. I think that does happen a lot now in films as well. I remember the big thing now with World War Z when that came out. Like they were kind of selling this epic zombie bloody massacre. I remember that was the Red Band trailer. Not really much happens in it like that at all. There's especially another film where critics panned it before it even came out, and it's been very well for itself. And you know.
But here's something that I've found interesting at the older I get, and I'm very old now. But I mean, it is that. Before a film comes out, you know, you see on all these websites that cater for that type of genre, and they're your kind of, they're your guardians, they're your guys, they're your boys or your gals, you know what I mean? And they're kind of like, they feel the film is theirs. Yeah. And so they're kind of, you know, you trust them, and you kind of go, wow, if those guys are saying, wow, this sounds really interesting, I'll go along with them. And so it comes back in a way to trying to, I suppose, social media working for you, you know, that you've got all these people who are willing to kind of go, I can't wait to see this film. And there's this real little buzz about it, you know? And it's really interesting, you know, you kind of somehow remember it, it goes into your head, you know, and you have this idea of all these people all around the world kind of going, oh, I can't wait for this really obscure film to come out, and then you've heard about it before it's come out. It's amazing. You know? To market it that way would cost gazillions, you know. So it's amazing, you know.
But I think what people forget about that kind of thing is you know, there is this perception that, you know, okay, I'm dealing with a site to do with science fiction genre, and we have all the sci-fi nerds saying, oh, I can't wait for this film to come out. That actually, the people who are really interested in film, who read film blogs, who know who directed a film or who's in a film, are the minority. You know what I mean? That they make up such a small amount of the audience that even if every one of them went to see it, you could see that it would flop. You know, well, so
there you go. That's the director to tell this producer that.
But I think it's you know, it's like, you know, I think people take that for granted, especially when they track films in the US. I mean, they have to ask people at the local Walmart coming out, you know, have you heard of this film? Are you aware of it? You know, and asking the Joe Soaps, because most people who go to the cinema, including people here, they will go on a Friday night or a Saturday night for a thing to do, and they'll pick the movie they want to go see based on the poster, or that sounds kind of good, Savage, fuck, let's go see it, you know what I mean, whatever, you know. It's not. Oh, that's David Fincher's new film.
I know. I agree with you.
But it was funny. Like I didn't realize.
Or it's actors.
Like,
and that's why cast dependent is become.
Exactly.
It's Brad Pitt's new movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, because I always assumed like stuff just when I was working in TV for a bit, that stuff like South Park and all these shows that I'd be into, and most people I know, I'll watch them, would rate massively. And they've got like, you know, 5% of the audience. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're on at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. Like, so they're not these, like, so even if I was to pitch sort of South Park to RTÉ,
but you've got to accept nearly sometimes that what you're making is alternative entertainment. I've accepted what I'm trying to do, and I know you're doing a different thing, but it's still alternative. It's still a small niche.
Totally.
Ciarán, you're probably more heading towards a wider sort of audience, nearly with what you're going to do, probably more than Citadel, but it's still, it would have been wider than stuff I've done, and wider than what you've done, because it's very, not boutique, but I don't know what the word is, but it's very
boutique.
Well, this is a word. This is one of these buzzwords, like noise that I've heard.
Boutique agency.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
You know, clients.
But you know, it comes down again. You've got a group of people who are around this table, and they come up. I don't know how you come up with an original idea, and you're running that against. You know, you're not supposed to, but I'm sure you do. You kind of go, I wonder how that would play. You know, or you know, because that'll be the first question the moment you start getting serious about it. You know, and you start to engage with it, and it all comes down to that one word, audience, you know, and which is it's amazing, you know.
Yeah, it's really. I think it's really hard for, you know, as I discovered last year, especially, you know, when you go around the festival circuit and you're seeing some real gems, you know, and they never end up being distributed, you know, and you never get to see them, and it really makes you realise that, you know, even though we have this social media and, you know, people on Facebook and whatever, that it's still really, really hard for an indie film to sort of get out there, and you know, it's like it is true word of mouth. There's the immediate sort of Twitter word of mouth, but there's also that much longer kind of, you know, as things go on over the years kind of thing of you know, Ryan Johnson said to me that, you know, I was talking, you know, that, you know, when you make an indie, he's referenced Citadel, it's like, you won't know how that's really been accepted for 7 or 8 years.
You're trying to answer this brick and might have to do loop or
exactly.
You know, from before that, I can't read.
Did the Buddha's balloon before?
Yeah.
Well, here's another question for you, and it's to do with the pitch. Like, the best pitch I've ever heard for anyone is actually the guy in this room, Conor McMahon, and it was for Banshee.
Right.
And
right pitch for it, yes.
It was like think Apocalypse Now with broomsticks. I mean,
which one?
Which one? Sorry, which one? And it's like, if that doesn't paint an image in your head, and you understand the tone and the concept straight away, like anyone would, like whatever. And I suppose, are you guys all good pitchers? I mean, do you think?
I know a few writers just from working around television and stuff like that who have actually made films, and they will tell you themselves they cannot pitch a film. They actually have to put it down on paper. And then there's other people who can actually put it down on paper, but they can pitch the film to you. So it's kind of one of those things. I just thinking of a specific writer I know.
Maybe I'm pitching to the wrong people as well.
Yeah, you never know.
Like, I've never pitched that idea to anyone that could give me money. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. So
pitch it.
Yeah. No, I
the pitching podcast.
But look, sorry, just want to, Conor, because I was saying, you know, you and me were doing more specialised stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know that you always hope that, say, something you do won't be just for the horror schlock audience. It will break through. Because they do all the time. It's just...
Yeah, that's the ultimate, I suppose. Or sometimes, like, I mean, you make one specifically schlocky. Or because of the story, it wouldn't suit it to be schlocky, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know? But,
I think the other thing to that as well is it's the person you're pitching it to, because they have to get it as well. And just using Zombie Bashers as an example, is when I pitched it to you, and we were in a restaurant or something like that, and you just got it straight away. Where I'm pretty sure if I pitched it, I could have pitched it to 15 people who go, I don't get it. So I think that person has to get it. So I don't know, is that down to me pitching it well, or just the fact that he picked up on what I was saying?
But people require different things, and it's getting harder all the time, because you know what they expect now, especially with the film I'm working at the moment. They expected a teaser trailer. They expected a sizzle reel, you know, or a rip-o-matic as they call them.
What's that?
What is that? Yeah?
Rip-o-matic is basically when you take a bunch of movies that you would say are vaguely similar.
You
know, and you could have traded with that, you know, with some music that reflects kind of the vibe that you're going for. So they'll watch that, and they'll watch the teaser trailer, and they'll look at some concept art and they go, okay, we'll kind of get what you're talking about here. So what happens in it? Do you know, you almost need that bed of sort of like, okay, we know what sort of zone we're in here.
I think that's actually good. because I think sometimes the words, you know, it mightn't get through the story. Whereas, because it was the same interview I was reading with John Landis, and he was going, "There's no original stories. It's all about the execution." So, what you're saying there is really important for someone to understand exactly how you're going to present this. What the unique take on it is. You know, I actually think that's not bad.
What about, because sometimes the note I've heard, and it's the one sometimes annoys me, but I'm already taking is where people go, is there examples where this has been done before? Do you know, like,
I
so
think the whole point is not to be done before.
Yeah,
That's
it's where's the original
But it's-
thought?
it's like people like to, I think, and it
Sales
does
it.
seem like like salespeople or the people who want to put money into it,
Yeah.
their assurance is to see that it's been done before, which to me is actually a bigger risk.
Well,
I think.
No,
I don't know what the balance is there.
that's interesting, because I know with Love Eternal we were on a Yave, and there was no way I could pitch it, and even now I can't really compare it to a film, and yet that may be commercially a dead end, but as far as I'm concerned, it's for film in general, it's more interesting that there's oddball stuff being made. I'm not like, you know, this is art versus commerce.
It is, but it comes down, like when you talk about the pitch to a producer, a lot of the time is that what you're imagining is you're imagining this little hot ball in your hand, and you're basically saying, right, I have to be, everyone can understand, see it and understand the energy and whatever, and I literally have to be able to pass that to some guy who's got 50 of them, and he's got to understand it and be able to keep it the exact same way and pass it to another guy, because that's it's been pitched up all the time. They're basically taking your pitch and they have to be able to relate to another person and get it and be able to have the same passion about it and keep it to the same level of energy, and then so all the way up. And that's the thing. It has to be, that pitch has to survive all the way up the line, you know, in terms of its inherent thought and energy, you know. And otherwise, if they're not able to get it, you're screwed.
But your pitch are you saying just the story pitch, or are you saying the personnel involved? And
well, no. I think a lot of it is, of course, the person involved is big, but a lot of people.
It's just the story, the hook.
The hook. Well, it's not.
Some films aren't the
one
hook.
line, and it's not 10 lines. It could be anything, but it's that thing that they understand what it is or not.
Yeah. Is it a lamp or a phone?
Is it a lamp or a phone?
Or a phone lamp.
Well, I think what Ciarán was saying is quite interesting. Now you're basically visualizing the film, giving people, like as you said, the teaser trailer, taking the clips from different films and concept art. You're giving them a whole thing where I think one of the most famous like pitches ever for Alien was it's Jaws in space. And that's what they ran with, but now it's just you need to give them so many different things.
Do you find doing all that stuff actually is beneficial for the writing of it, if you know what I mean? Because you put all that work in, or is it almost like, oh, I better do this just for them?
No, it's hugely beneficial. The only sort of negative side of it is if you do all this work and it ends up going nowhere.
Yeah, I suppose.
You know, like how many times you do that?
The only thing that would piss me off about it is that if I wasn't 100% on exactly where the tone was, and I was sort of still exploring that. But I suppose that's a problem. You need to actually, especially at that level, you need to know.
No, I mean, it's kind of, it is about taking them by the hand and sort of saying, you know, it's okay. You know, I know what I'm doing here. And you can do whatever you want to give you the money. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to go, hey, this is not exactly like the teaser trailer that you gave us that you made for 50 cents. You know, so. But
I'm guessing if you've taken it on, and we were saying earlier, you've got it in, you sort of know how you're going to present it, and you know what you're going to do with it.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, the funny thing about showing something like that before you usually give a little pre-thing of like, it's about this and this happens to this guy, and you give them the thing that you know straight away as they're watching it whether they're the right people or whether they get it. You know.
Well, that's it. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
It really is. It's quite mad with that way. I mean, the another thing is like everyone here is Irish, and you know there is this cultural identity and things you're doing in terms of being Irish and so on and so forth.
Go on.
And you know it becomes part of an artificial part of a pitch a lot of the time, or not, as the case may be. And obviously it doesn't bother you in a kind of forced manner, but it must always be there in the back of your head. You know, you're Irish, whether you like it or not.
I was just going to say that I was asked that question at a film festival in New York, where somebody, you know, asked me, am I an Irish filmmaker, or am I a filmmaker that happens to be Irish? You know, and I, you know, especially when I think about what I've done, you know, in the past and stuff, is that I'm very much, I think, a filmmaker who happens to be Irish, because I don't know exactly what an Irish filmmaker is, especially in terms of genres. Does that mean it's set here? I don't know what defines an Irish filmmaker. I mean, the films that I love, the films that I try to make, the films that I'd like to make in the future, are just like cool films, and I don't think about it in terms of sort of having some cultural stamp.
Yeah, I think Kevin Lahan said it to you as well about Grabbers.
Yeah.
He was standing in Cineworld behind a few kids, and there was a big massive poster for Grabbers. And I was like, oh my god, that looks amazing. And then one kid goes, oh, it's Irish, let's not go see it. And he was just going, it doesn't matter, it's a genre film. It's that happens to be made in Ireland. So
well, I would argue that of any of the sort of horrors released last year, and I put Citadel and Stitches into this category, Grabbers was the most Irish.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It was unapologetic. It was set definitely here. It's about Irish characters and
an
riffing
Irish
off
sort of trait.
yeah, exactly, the kind of cliche of the drink and you know, and that's very very Irish, but directed by an Englishman. You know, so it's like, is that an Irish genre film, or is that?
But I found it.
Shouldn't matter. Really.
Yeah, well, see, what I found is weird is that sometimes your initial intention, it gets, like, again, because of, say, like, we had American investors in our film and this kind of thing, and so I kind of had to cast people who had very clear diction kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, what I mean is, like, I couldn't cast, there were certain things I couldn't cast, and then you're
like your recurring character.
Yeah. And you kind of, it does bring this thing up. It's like, okay, I can't actually cast like people from the area where I grew up and put in a film if I've written it about the area I've grown up.
This brings me on to my favourite topic, the Irish accent on screen.
Yeah, well, we're obviously not talking about Tom Cruise and Far and Away, are we?
No, but it's interesting what you said, like, you know, that I initially, like, Citadel was always set here, right? Yeah. And I imagine the guy in the lead role, I wanted somebody with, you know, a Dublin accent that was authentic, and not somebody putting on the quote-unquote Northside Dublin accent. Oh, Jesus. Like, just somebody who was authentic and it felt real. And I remember somebody saying to me very early on in the process, they referred to a National Geographic documentary that was set in Ballymun, and the fact that it had to have subtitles.
Yeah.
You're like, do you really want your film, even though it's in English, with subtitles?
It's the same with The Commitments. When The Commitments was released in the US, they actually gave a pamphlet out in the cinema describing what certain words meant.
Right, yeah.
And I was going, well, it's in English, but I know what you mean. Like,
it's really, like, I find the Irish accent on screen really interesting in that, you know, for me it boils down, you know, to four accents. You know, you've got the two sides of Dublin, like it's either the sort of the Jesus guy or the, you know, he's again, you're right, you know, kind of guy. You've got the Northern Ireland accent, and then you've got the country accent.
Hang on. There's a couple of country accents.
No, but of course, but on film.
Yeah, but on film, it's
okay.
On film, of course. I mean, there's an accent in every county, but on film, you know. And the funny thing about the Irish accent as well is that, you know, what I find interesting, because I'm a sci-fi geek, is that, you know, if you take certain sort of generic accents, you take the American accent, right? If you watch something like Star Trek, an American accent can be from planet whatever. Okay, somebody with an English accent can be from whatever, but they're usually either the wise person or the villain, right? But somebody with an Irish accent, they're from Ireland. Can't be from anywhere else.
Didn't Alan Rickman say years ago the only reason he was ever cast in films is because people knew he was going to be the bad guy, like in Robin Hood and Die Hard.
But what do you do? Like, what is the actual?
But it's
like,
two of the most famous actors in the world, or the three with Saoirse Ronan, or Brendan Gleeson as well. Like, there's a lot. They're Irish.
Yeah,
but
they're not necessarily speaking in their accents. Exactly. Yeah.
One of my favourite films ever made was The Usual Suspects, but there is one part in The Usual Suspects that always kind of throws me out of the film, and it's the part where Gabriel Byrne, in the middle of a pool hall, goes, there is no Kaiser Soze in a very thick Dublin accent, and you're kind of going, well, I kind of bought the film to this point, but now I'm totally out of it, so I don't really...
I'm okay with accents. I actually really like it in... I'm just thinking of Tyrannosaur, for example, thick English accents. I like it. Like, I mean, but the thing is, I understand them.
But it's set
maybe
where, right?
that's-
It's set where it's
Oh yeah,
it's over
exactly.
there.
If it's
Yeah.
set. So what you're asking about is,
Sometimes when I hear Irish accents on screen, it takes.
You mean they're not set?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not
Yeah.
set, you know. If it's
Well, I think the biggest one ever that ever took me out of a film was when I got around to watching Colin Farrell and Alexander. It completely
that
took
really
me out of the
threw me.
Yeah,
movie.
but Miley from Glenroe was in that. You know, you expected as an Irish person to take that seriously.
But what do you do, say, when you're writing an Irish movie set in Ireland? Like, do you just not set it specifically somewhere? Do you?
Well, it's like the north of England accent thing. Is that
In colour.
you've got to, you know.
well, it depends, because he ran into the problem of it was a genre film that was going to go wide for
Yeah,
American
yeah.
audiences, so it wasn't important that they
Had.
that they had regional dialect.
Yeah.
Whereas in fairness, I'd probably prefer if they did.
Yeah, like, do you know something like Attack the Block or something where it's just...
Yeah.
it's-
They go straight
Yeah.
for it. There's
well, so many people complained and not understanding what the characters were
I
saying.
don't think it did as well as it might have done as well. It's a
Like
really...
there's certain accents I think that, you know, because we're not necessarily used to them. Do you know that we're used to sort of hearing several types of British accents over the years from, you know,
And American
England
accents.
studios.
We're actually quite good with English, any English-speaking country. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can understand Australian, all the
Yeah.
American regionals, and
Yeah,
and the
you
English.
grow up with it, you know.
Yeah, but how come we can do it and they can't?
Because you grow up with it. Because it's
So
the
we're a tiny
proliferation-
little country that
Yeah.
they just don't fucking get.
Exactly, you know, and there's areas of certainly, in, you know, from having visited like certain areas of northern Canada where I can't understand what you're saying, you know, or I had to tune my ear in to a certain extent, you know,
Yeah.
or I'll watch, you know, I remember it taking me, you know, 2 or 3 episodes of watching The Wire to really tune into to you know some of the language.
Yeah, but I know what you're saying. But I actually got it. I could understand them.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, but it was so kind of authentic and fresh.
It was brilliant, wasn't
that
it?
it
Yeah.
was like, hang on, I need to tune in here.
Yeah.
Well, I think similarly, like we have phrases even in this country.
That's a problem.
That are not, you know, even asking a question in the negative. You know, you wouldn't have the time, would you? Is lost on most people. You know, it's
Yeah, and then 1/4 is a problem as well.
You know,
Yeah.
it's you know, Asher, it's grand or whatever. You know that. If you
That
were-
yoke over there.
Your man, your one.
There's a gazillion of them, but it's like, you know, unless you're somewhat familiar with it, if you're thrown into that world, you know, whether you're from London or whether you're from, you know,
I suppose it comes down to, like, if you have a more,
But that,
even if it, like, let's assume everything is at its best level of extreme intelligence genre, if we're talking about genre, you know, like that, or even whatever the most schlocky horror or whatever that you, if you have an Irish accent within that context, that it just takes you out of a genre story if it's not particularly about Ireland.
yeah,
Whereas if it is particularly about Ireland, you accept the accent.
Yeah.
And that's what, this
Yeah.
is just something that I've heard through the years, not myself, but from other people outside of Ireland, that this
Yeah.
they felt is a truism. And I'm trying to make sense of it in my own head.
yeah.
Is that true or not? That's
Well, it's something I feel as well. It's like, you know, that you'll watch it, especially if it's not set here.
Yeah.
You'll watch a film and suddenly, you know, one of the gangsters has an Irish accent, and for a second I'm like, is he Irish? You know what I mean? And I'm pulled
but
out.
is that because you're Irish? Do you know?
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe,
Maybe it's not a
maybe.
problem.
I can't answer that. You know.
I mean, because like they say, Cockney accent, nobody has a problem with it. It's like, you know, and it's hard to understand. It's as hard as a
Yeah.
thick Irish accent.
But again, I think it's the fact that, you know, yes, we are a small nation. Yes, we've been making films for a relatively small amount of time compared to, we've heard Cockney accents on screen since
Yeah.
whenever, you know. And,
But since Dick Van Dyke did his version of it.
right.
What
yeah.
if it's Citadel? Would you have done, if you had to do that in Ireland, what accents would you have given those characters?
Well, I would have given him a Dublin accent, but I would have had to sort of soften it to some degree.
Yeah.
You know, so that you. I mean, I remember, you know, Jim Sheridan said to me that, you know, when they first had cast Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot, that he was too good.
Yeah.
He was so good at you know not only the character but the condition that he was almost ununderstandable.
Yeah.
And he had to tone it back because what's the point if nobody can understand it? You know?
Well, here I suppose I'm going with all this stuff. You know, obviously with the killing and kind of Danish TV series being all over and very cool and Nordic noir and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there is a sense that people watch because, as you know, I've grown up with subtitles.
Yeah.
They're my big love. But one thing I do find is that it adds an extra layer of realism, and it also makes people concentrate. That when things are subtitled, you know, and you know, it's everyone says okay, in terms of language, you know, we're English speaking, so that gives us access to the big huge audiences. And I saw in RTÉ Glenn, or sorry, the head of RTÉ Glenn. Yeah, sorry. He described it very well. He said, you know, we're not just this place between Montana and Cumbria. You know what I mean? We're like, we are Irish no matter what happens. That's kind of a truth. But when you take a look at you know, a Norwegian film or an Icelandic film or a Swedish film, and you see the darkness, you see the subtitles and all that. There's this layer of exotic feeling to it all, you know, that kind of that we don't have access to. Even though we don't have any of the benefits.
Yeah. Well, so it is a blessing and a curse that we just speak English, you know, and it's like you could have that kind of vibe if a film was entirely in Irish, and you don't have that sort of sanitized T.G. Catter sort of, you know, that you could do something that was quite sort of like gritty and guttural. But we don't. You know, so
I've been hogging all the questions. I got one last one for it, like CGI, right? I went to see Gravity the other day, and it's funny where you have this kind of what do you call a thing where it's just the zeitgeist, you know, this sense of you know, sci-fi is sometimes one of the most mainstream of the genres, you know what I mean? And people look to the future and they try to learn from it, and there's I don't know, it's a very strange genre for me. Sci-fi, the older I kind of get, and I just think that when you know, has there been Irish sci-fi films? That's the whole point.
I mean, there was Earthbound last year. You know, well, I again, this sort of comes back to my thing of like the Irish accent. It needs to be set here, okay? And I strongly believe that the best films are inherent to their location, okay? That they can't happen anywhere else, right? And if your story could work better in New York, then set it in New York, you know? And I see, for me, very little reason to have a sci-fi set in Ireland. I don't get it, you know what I mean? I could just about buy Doctor Who in London and stuff like that, but I don't see any reason for sci-fi to happen in Dublin when it could happen in
London.
In South Africa, you know, whatever, you know.
I would agree, as I'd be a big sci-fi geek as well, and I think that it probably would throw me if there was a sci-fi film set here. And it was like, this is a science fiction film, we're building a rocket to the moon, and by the way, it's in Dublin. You're gonna go, I'm not really buying that.
Yeah, there's gotta be a why. You know what I mean? And you know, I can see why horrors are set here. We have such a rich folklore background. I can, you know, that makes sense to me. You know, I can see why certain dramas might be set here, comedies especially. But I can't see why sci-fi would be set here. Maybe I'll be proven wrong.
That's a challenge.
That's a challenge for anyone out there. Make a sci-fi here.
Leprechauns from space.
Well, with that, now I think I'm just gonna just wrap it up and want to thank everyone, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.